Have you ever stood and watched your own house, the place where you lived for 32 years, still holding the scent of your late wife, burned down right in front of your eyes? I have, and I thought that was the worst thing in that would-be storm night. Until I called my son and he said, "Dad, just get a hotel. Our place is a mess." No worry, no question about whether I was alive, just a sentence that sliced through the decades I spent raising him. And then I heard a woman's voice, his wife, echo from behind him, colder than the rain slamming against my windshield. "I'm not letting some old man smelling like smoke walk into this house. My PR still has to function." That night, I understood one thing. Some fires come from flames, and some come from the people you call family. If you've ever been betrayed by the person who should have protected you the most, this story will make you feel you're not walking alone in the dark. If this short story touched you, even for a small moment, I want to offer you a soft thank you, like the breeze from the bay brushing against a porch on a quiet afternoon. Leave a or a hello from wherever you're listening, so I know this story didn't pass by alone. Thank you, because you stopped, because you listened, and because you cared. Let me begin my story. At 68, people think a man has already seen everything in life that can burn. But that night, I learned the thing that scorches the heart the fastest isn't fire, but the feeling of standing on a ferry, seeing an orange glow in the distance, and realizing it's rising from the exact place where your home sits. The wind from Elliott Bay slapped cold against my face as the ferry from Seattle pulled into Clinton. Rain hammered the windshield, the wipers swept once, returning a world smeared in gray. I had driven this road thousands of times, from the ferry dock to Whidbey Island, past the black fir trees and the wooden signs saying, "Fresh eggs, blueberries, for sale." Storm nights in Puget Sound are unlike anywhere else. Clouds so low you feel you could reach up and touch them, distant lights stretching into blurred yellow streaks. I turned on the small radio in my car, but the rain on the roof drowned it out. My mind was still sorting tomorrow's tasks. The landlady in Coupeville wanted her listing on MLS before the weekend, and the newlywed couple in Freeland still hadn't sent their loan documents. Real estate has a cruel rule. When someone else's house burns, it's just inventory shifting, but when your own house burns, it's a lifetime disappearing. I had just turned past the third curve on the dirt road leading home when I saw it. At first, I thought it was lightning somewhere, a flicker of orange near the horizon, then gone. But it didn't go. It grew, trembling in the rain like a flame seized by the storm, rising higher, becoming a twisted column of light near the grove of maple trees that stood behind my wooden house. My hands tightened on the wheel. A part of my brain tried to deny it. Maybe it wasn't mine, maybe a neighbor's place across the road, maybe the power station, maybe the old abandoned shed, anything except the one thing I was thinking. But the closer I drove, the clearer it became. Not just fire anymore, but a whole patch of sky glowing orange, deepening into red, a black streak of smoke whipping sideways, curved like a brushstroke across the gray sky. I had stood outside hundreds of burned homes in my career, walking clients through structural checks after fires, taking photos for insurance. I knew the posture of a collapsing roof. I knew the sound of dry timber cracking. Even from a distance, I recognized the silhouette of the place where I had lived for 32 years. My house was burning. My foot hit the gas almost without thought. The old Subaru screamed, its tires slipping in the water. Wind slapped rain onto the glass like someone dumping buckets over the car. The sign, South Whidbey Fire EMS Station, streaked past on the right. As I turned into the narrow road up the hill where my wooden house sat, the fire was already visible between the soaked trees, orange slicing through the blue-black like a rip. My headlights swept past a red fire truck, then stopped on reflective tape, and a figure in a yellow turnout coat standing in the road, hand raised to stop me. I braked hard, the tires hissing on the wet asphalt. The firefighter walked up, half his face hidden by his mask, but his eyes carried the look of someone who had said this line many times in his life. "Sir, you can't go any farther. The structure is fully involved. It could collapse at any moment." I lowered the window, and the smoke hit instantly, sharp, thick, mixing the smell of burning plastic with wet pine. I recognized the slope up to my home right behind him. That's my house," I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. "The house at the end of the hill. It's the only one up there." He looked at me for one more second, then nodded. There was something in his eyes, a kind of professional compassion I had seen in every job that dealt with disaster. "I understand, but you cannot go near it. We already checked. No one is trapped inside. You live alone, right?" I nodded, almost mechanically. "My wife is gone. It's just me." I didn't realize how many years I had been saying, "My wife is gone." But this time, it echoed differently in my ears, as if Meredith had left only yesterday. Behind him, through the gap between two fir trunks, I saw my roof, or what was left of it. The fire had eaten the kitchen-side roof, flaring through the beams I'd replaced with my own hands 10 years ago. The living room window had shattered, glass pieces reflecting the flames like salt scattered across a wound. The highest point of the fire pulsed, shoved sideways by the sea. Wind, leaning right, then whipping left with each gust, as if trying to lick the whole forest edge clean. "My documents," I heard myself say, meaningless. "My client files, listings, contracts, everything is in there." The firefighter put his hand on my car door, keeping his voice firm. "Sir, listen to me. That house is completely unsafe. We sent a team in for the initial check, but the ceiling is about to collapse. Our job now is to contain it, not let it spread to the woods. Everything else we deal with later. Everything else." The contracts I had pinned my fall hopes on, the 3 listing files I had just secured, each one a piece of my future commission, the thick packets of printouts on sale prices, appraisals, and the area maps I had marked with highlighters. And worst of all, the small wooden box on the living room shelf, the one holding Meredith's photos, our wedding day, the day we moved to Whidbey, the day we repainted the porch together. I opened the car door. "I just need to get one thing, one box, right on the living room shelf, within arm's reach. I know the layout." He blocked me instantly, gripping my shoulder. "No, sir. I'm not letting you go in there. One wrong step and you won't come back out. I'm not pulling another person out of rubble tonight." Behind him, white jets of water blasted from the hoses, hitting the flames and bursting into thick steam. Each hit pushed the fire down a moment, only for it to surge back up. Rain, water, wind, and fire twisted together into something unrecognizable. The cracking of wood, the crash of falling metal sheets, the howl of wind, the static of radios. I stood there, fingers gripping the car door edge, feeling as if someone had pulled all the air out of my body. An SUV screeched to a stop behind us, its door swinging open as Mrs. Jensen from the house on the right, the one who always brought me blueberry bread every summer, ran over holding a heavy coat. "Everett!" she called, her voice breaking. "Oh dear, I just looked out the window and saw... Are you all right?" I turned toward her, trying to force a smile that my mouth wouldn't form. I'm fine. It's just... everything is in there." She draped the coat over my shoulders, even though I still had mine on. "Come sit in the car. It's freezing. They're doing all they can. At least you're still here." Her words sounded like comfort, but also like a verdict. The house is gone. Only you are left. They guided me to the roadside, where an ambulance was parked with its doors open. They wanted to check my blood pressure, see if I was in shock. I let them, not because I cared, but because I didn't have the strength to refuse. As the ambulance clock ticked forward, the flames in the distance shifted from bright orange to deep red. The rain thickened, hitting the metal roof like someone knocking from inside a coffin. A young firefighter approached, helmet pushed, back, face streaked with soot. "Mr. Maddox." He glanced at the name on the clipboard. We tried going around the back, but the living room roof has collapsed. We'll keep it from spreading to the trees, but he hesitated. Your house can't be saved anymore. I nodded slightly. I had known since I saw the fire column from far away, but hearing someone else say it made it different, like something stamped, confirmed, recorded in words. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? He asked, his tone shifting to practical. Family? Friends? A hotel? I thought of the client list in my mind, the people I had helped buy homes for 30 years, the handshakes after closings. I thought of the waterfront houses I sold, the cabins I staged, but none of those were home. None were places a man who'd lost everything could knock on at midnight and say, "Can I sleep here for a night?" Graham. My son's name rose like a reflex. He lived in Tacoma, in that 3-story townhouse near Point Ruston with a view of Commencement Bay. I had stood there when he got the keys, my hand giving him the bank check of $160,000, his down payment to escape renting. He hugged me and said, "I'll never forget this, Dad." I pulled out my phone, my hand still shaking from the cold. The screen was wet with rain, and I wiped it quickly on my jeans. Graham sat in my favorites, right under Meredith voicemail, a contact I had never deleted. I tapped it. The phone rang 3 times, 4 times. On the 5th ring, just when I thought it would go to voicemail, he picked up. "Dad?" His voice came through, mixed with the sound of a TV and something like silverware hitting plates. "It's late." I swallowed, hearing my own voice rasp. "Are you home?" "Yeah, we're having dinner." "What's going on? Are you okay?" I turned my head toward the flickering firelight in the distance. My house. It burned down, Graham. All of it. The storm knocked down a tree, and there was an electrical short. They said nothing can be saved. I'm down the road with the fire crew. I paused, inhaling deeply. I don't have anywhere to go tonight. He was silent for 3 seconds. The longest silence in the world. I heard the TV get quieter, a chair scrape, and Graham exhale. "Wow, I didn't think it was that serious," he said, his voice slightly off. "Dad, there are hotels in Langley or back in Seattle. You have a credit card, right? We can figure things out tomorrow, okay?" I closed my eyes. I don't want a hotel. I just need a place to lie down tonight. A sofa, a long chair, anything. Tomorrow I'll go to the insurance company, call the lender and the office. I won't bother you long. Just one night. The silence on his end stretched again, tight like a guitar string wound too hard. I heard him breathe, then the faint scrape of a chair on wood, as if he stood up and froze. No one spoke, but there were sounds woven into the pause, the soft thud of a glass being set down, the steps of high heels passing by, the quiet click of a refrigerator door closing. I realized someone was there with him, and Graham's silence wasn't from not hearing me, but from not daring to answer. Finally he spoke, his voice smaller, like someone trying to hide half a sentence from the person standing nearby. "Dad, tonight's not good. The house is messy. Someone is working. Just get a hotel, okay? We'll figure things out tomorrow." No direct refusal. No, don't come. Just hesitation. The same hesitation I had known since he was 8 years old. Every time he lied, he always let out a tiny breath right after the last sentence. I opened my eyes, looking at the smoking pile of ashes in the distance, hearing the Whidbey wind whistling through the scorched maple trees. A bolt of lightning tore across the sky, lighting up the last section of the roof, collapsing like wet paper. And in that moment, with the rain tapping on the car roof like scattered pebbles, I realized the painful part wasn't losing the house. I knew my son was trying to avoid me, but didn't dare to say it. I took a long breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Okay, I understand." I hung up. No goodbye. And I knew tomorrow morning I had to go to Tacoma. I needed to see for myself what had made my son stop opening the door for his father. I reached Tacoma at 9:45 in the morning, just as the first sunlight lay a cold, spotless brightness over the row of townhouses, an hour that makes anyone who has just lost a home feel out of place. My old Subaru stopped in front of Graham's three-story house. The ivory facade, the black steel balcony, the two white rose trellises wrapped around the double French doors, like a gate built to display a lifestyle more than to welcome family. On the doorstep hung a wooden sign reading, "Home is everything," and I stood there with my hand on the car door handle a second longer than usual, wondering whether my son's definition of home still included me at all. I stepped onto the porch and knocked 3 times. The lock clicked softly. The door opened exactly 5 centimeters, revealing half of Lydia's face, my daughter-in-law, her makeup so polished the powder looked like fresh silk. She did not open it further. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was soft, but with a thin layer of ice. I kept my tone steady. "My house burned down last night. I'm just asking to stay one night." Lydia glanced down at my clothes, soot-stained, frayed at the collar, still carrying the smell of smoke, then gave a smile as thin as a pencil line. "You wore that here?" "He still works in real estate. Clients will think we're housing a homeless person." Through the narrow gap, I saw Graham standing exactly 5 meters away in the living room, hands in pockets, shoulders drawn in. He looked at me, and in that brief instant I saw confusion, guilt, and fear. He wanted to step forward. I knew he did. But Lydia tilted her head, raised one eyebrow, and every part of Graham that wanted to do the right thing folded back like a flame blown out by wind. The door across the street opened. A neighbor holding a cappuccino looked over. A young couple walking their dog slowed down. A man on the second-floor balcony leaned against the railing, watching. They all understood what was happening. They looked at me, not with contempt, but with the weary eyes of people who have witnessed too many families fracture in silence, part pity, part discomfort, and something that felt like shared hurt. Lydia smiled faintly. "Sorry, the house is a mess. We still have to film this afternoon. PR's running a campaign. It's not convenient for you to come in?" She pressed the word "you" like a low note in a song, meant to remind the listener of distance. Graham took half a step forward. "Lyd, maybe." She turned her head with a light glance, and that half step disappeared. I inhaled, keeping my voice from trembling. "I understand." Lydia smiled a victorious smile, as if she had just protected her personal brand from something she considered a threat to her image. The door closed, gentle but cold, like the final tap of a judge's gavel. I turned away, not looking at the people witnessing it. I got into my car, sat in the driver's seat, without turning on the engine, without heat, without moving, letting the Tacoma cold soak through each layer of clothing, each joint, each space left inside me. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. The battery was at 4%. I opened my contacts, scrolling past names that used to make up a lifetime of work. Clients, partners, acquaintances, calls long asleep for years. But my finger stopped at one single name, the name I had not called for 16 years, August Pierce. I stared at it, my breath turning into white mist, then pressed call. I pressed the phone to my ear, my heart beating slowly, like I had just walked out of a second fire. A fire without visible flames, but one that burned away whatever pride I had left. The phone rang only half a ring before the other end picked up. So quickly I thought I was dreaming. "Everett?" That voice. I had not heard it in 16 years, yet just one word blew everything inside me open like a window slammed by sea wind. I couldn't answer right away. My throat tightened, as if all the ashes from last night were still stuck in my lungs. I tried to speak, but the sound that came out of me was a broken gasp, the kind a 68-year-old man never wants anyone to hear. "My house burned down, August. I have nothing left." And in that moment, something I didn't expect and no longer had the strength to hide happened. I cried for the first time in 10 years. Not loud crying, but the small trembling of someone who has held himself together too long and suddenly cannot anymore. There was a brief silence on the other end, not a heavy silence, but the kind that comes from someone who instantly understands what is falling apart in your life. Then August exhaled slowly, firmly. "Everett, I owe you my life. Send me your location. I'm coming right now." I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to believe it instantly. Another part whispered that no one comes right now in real life. I was sitting in my car outside Graham's house, having the door shut in my face by my daughter-in-law. Who would show up for me after 16 years of silence? But August was not someone who lived in maybe later. I sent my location. Less than 1 minute later, a message appeared. "On my way." I looked toward Graham's door, where Lydia had pulled the curtain slightly, just enough to watch me through the glass. Her mouth curved into an unreadable smirk, part pity, part disdain, part relief that she had handled the inconvenience named her father-in-law. I was reaching for the steering wheel when I heard a low but powerful engine at the end of the street, a sound unmistakable. The V8 engine of a Mercedes Maybach GLS 600, heavy, smooth, and commanding enough to make the whole neighborhood hold its breath. The black SUV turned into the row, its long LED lights reflecting off Graham's ivory facade, then stopped right in front of my car. 12 minutes. It had taken exactly 12 minutes. The door opened and August Pierce stepped out. Silver hair, charcoal cashmere coat, the look of a man who had lived long enough to know exactly when to appear and exactly when to stay silent. Lydia yanked the curtain shut. I saw her clearly through the glass, her eyes widening, her mouth freezing, as if someone had thrown the truth in her face, that the man she had just treated like trash knew someone half of Tacoma only dared to see in newspapers. Graham stepped to the doorway, opening it halfway, looking at me, then at the Maybach, then at August, his face drained of color. "Dad, who—" He didn't finish because August walked straight to me, placing his hand on my shoulder. A firm but not rough gesture, like someone who once pulled you back from a cliff neither of you ever mentioned again. "Everett," he said, his voice steady, resonant, and clear enough for the entire street to hear. "Come back to Bainbridge with me." August gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze, the Maybach behind him opening with a soft, luxurious click that contrasted completely with the chaos inside me. His eyes said everything without another word, just a tilt of his head toward the car. And the moment I placed my foot on the Maybach's step, I understood. My life had just turned in a direction Graham and Lydia would never see coming. Near noon, August's Maybach glided across the Agate Pass Bridge and into Bainbridge Island, where tall, Douglas firs stood like cathedral pillars on both sides, casting shadows over the rain-soaked road. I had been to Bainbridge many times with Meredith, but never inside Baylight Crest, the place locals called the sky reserved for people so successful they no longer need to open their mouths to prove it. The Corton steel gate opened by license plate recognition. The sloped road led up to a 2-level, low-e glass estate facing straight toward Port Madison, the shoreline shimmering like a sheet of silver. I stepped out. Sea wind carried a faint salt smell through the sculpture garden, where metal art pieces rotated with the breeze. The entire ocean-facing facade was transparent glass, 12-foot panels reflecting white clouds, drifting like slow-motion film. Inside, the ceiling rose nearly 7 meters, light falling onto white oak floors. Everything so pristine I was afraid my footsteps would stain the air. August placed a hand on my shoulder as if welcoming an honored guest, not a man thrown out by his own son. "Sit down, Everett. We begin." I sat in the art room, its walls covered with works by Pacific Northwest artists, all storms and rainforests, each one speaking its own language. August leaned against the stone table, arms folded, looking at me with the eyes of someone who cared more about truth than politeness. Everett, what they did to you is not just disrespect. He paused, letting the words hang like a cold blade. This is elder financial abuse, and under Washington law, RCW 74.34, this is a serious offense. I stared at him. August, I don't want to sue my son. This is not suing. This is protecting yourself from losing another dollar. I said nothing. He walked slowly toward me. Everett, tell me everything you have given them. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. 160,000, I said. The first time so Graham could place the down payment on the Tacoma house. August nodded slightly. Next. 48,000 for Lydia to open that image consulting studio. I inhaled. 20,000, they said, for roof repairs, then used it to buy a furniture collection. My hand trembled slightly. 310,000 over 7 years in small pieces. Every time Graham said he needed temporary support. My voice grew hoarse. And 35,000 recently, when Lydia said they would collapse financially if I didn't help. I looked at my hands. They felt empty enough to be ashamed. August didn't speak for a few seconds. He simply set his iPad on the table. The total is $573,000. Hearing it spoken felt like someone had slammed a hammer into my chest. Everett, he said, his voice softening. People who get taken advantage of are not stupid. They are kind at the wrong time to the wrong people. He picked up his phone and dialed. Nadia, Rowan, financial investigator. I heard the ringing. A low, smooth female voice, like wet stone after rain, answered, Pierce speaking? Nadia, August said, I need a full forensic check. Urgent. Names? Graham and Lydia Whitford, he replied. I held my breath. I want to know how much they owe, how much they spend, where their real assets are, and what they're planning next. I want everything. The other end went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Understood, Nadia said. You think they only shut the door on you. My spine tightened. You think they only want to push you away? Nadia exhaled softly. Everett, people like that never stop at one door. I'm afraid they want a lot more than that. That afternoon, the Bainbridge sea wind blew against the low E glass panels, making the entire art room of Baylight Crest tremble like a long breath from the ocean. I thought I was already familiar with the feeling of being betrayed, until Nadia returned, carrying her laptop and an expression that could no longer maintain professional neutrality. Everett, she said, placing it on the stone table, you need to see this. The screen lit up. A message thread between Lydia and a group of her PR friends, people who lived on image and polished illusions. But among the texts about client schedules, photo shoots, and TikTok filming, there was one message that chilled me more than the Whidbey fire. When he loses his house, easier to control. Just say he's unstable. Lydia, no emoji, no embellishment, no disguise. Just a sentence like a sharpened blade laid on the table, waiting to be used. Nadia pulled me closer to the screen, her voice low as if holding herself steady. You're wondering how I got these messages, right? The sender is a woman in Lydia's PR group. Her name is Marin Holt, and she has her own reasons to hate people like Lydia. I looked at her, waiting. Marin's father was put under a conservatorship by his own brother, exactly the way Lydia is preparing to do to you, Nadia said, her eyes meeting mine with unvarnished sympathy. He lost his home, his check signing rights, his medical decision rights, all because of one signature. Marin watched her father die slowly in the house he once paid for. And when Lydia bragged in the group chat about stripping you of your rights, it triggered everything in her, and she sent it all to me. She said, I will not let another father walk that path. I went still, not just the betrayal from my son, but the realization that strangers were protecting me more than my own blood. Nadia didn't stop. She opened another window, a PDF file. The name froze me. Petition for conservatorship. Everett Maddox. Draft. Page by page appeared. Template declarations, capacity evaluation forms, a list of requests for the court to remove my financial authority. Everything was filled in: my age, birth date, old address, the claim of psychological instability after losing home. There was even a section for indicators of cognitive decline. Left blank, but with space ready to be written in. They had prepared everything. They were waiting for me to break. Nadia scrolled to the bottom. Prepared by Lydia Whitford. And beneath that, like a hammer dropping onto my ribs, reviewed by G. Whitford. Graham, my son, he knew, he read, he stayed silent. He allowed it. Every sound in the estate disappeared, leaving only the heavy thud of my own blood in my ears. August stood behind me, looking at the screen like someone staring at the person who stabbed his friend. He spoke through his teeth. This isn't just emotion, Everett. This is a crime. This is exploitation. This is attempted conservatorship fraud. I couldn't speak. I just stared at my son's name on the corner of the document, like an ink stain that could never be erased. August picked up his phone, his voice harder than steel. David Holmes, prepare the demand letter. Priority. I looked at him. Demand? What? August turned to me, eyes like fire behind stone. A demand letter, the written notice for repayment and legal warning. Step 1 in forcing them to return every dollar, every act, every wrongdoing. That night, as darkness covered the Bainbridge shoreline, I looked down at my phone. A message had arrived. Dad, don't escalate this. Graham, no apology, no concern. Not one extra word, just a request that I stay silent the way I had for 30 years. I set the phone down and did not reply. For the first time in my life, I let my son fall without reaching out to catch him. The next morning, Bainbridge fog blurred the glass walls of Baylight Crest like a cold white breath. I had just finished pouring a cup of hot tea when August walked into the library, followed by a woman with steel-silver hair, a charcoal-tailored suit, and eyes sharp enough to make the entire room feel smaller. Everett, August said, this is Marion Estes, the best in Seattle in elder financial exploitation. I knew that name. Every broker, every banker in Seattle did. Marion Estes did not lose cases, and when she extended her hand to shake mine, I understood why. Her hand was cold, firm, and straight like a verdict signed before being read. Mr. Maddox, she said, opening a leather folder, the total amount you provided them is $573,000. I will send a demand letter requiring full repayment within 30 days, if they don't pay. She lifted her eyes, her smile moving exactly 1 millimeter. We moved to phase 2. She signed the demand letter, the pen stroke a single straight line without hesitation. I looked at the number 573,000 on the page, feeling something both strange and painful. It was the money I had given Graham over the years without ever asking for it back, because I thought I was protecting my son. Turns out I was signing my own sentence. Marion sent the letter at 9:14 a.m. By 10:02, the storm exploded. My phone vibrated nonstop, not from Graham, but from a number I had never saved, yet instantly recognized. Lydia. I hadn't even answered before the screen switched to a live image. She was standing in her Tacoma studio. Behind her, the neon sign, Lydia Whitford Image Lab, surrounded by more than 100 employees, filming reels, setting frames, marking scripts. She did not turn off the live stream. She did not mute the mic. She did not lower her voice. Everyone witnessed it. What do you want from us? Lydia screamed through the phone, her voice echoing across the room. Several employees jerked their heads up. Cameras kept rolling. Comments began flooding down the live stream. Who do you think you are? Some old leech. You're a burden. You don't deserve to be Graham's father. No one wants someone like you in their house. I stood still, letting every word hit my ears like salt-tipped arrows. Around Lydia, some workers signaled for her to stop. She waved them off and screamed louder. "I'm not paying a single dollar. You are a burden. You are—" She was about to continue when a technician cut the studio audio. However, the live stream had already been broadcast for several minutes, more than enough time for thousands to view it. And worse, Lydia's live streams often had corporate clients watching. Insulting her father-in-law live, on air, was equivalent to taking scissors and cutting her own reputation's support rope. Graham stayed silent. No call, no text, no intervention, no attempt to shield or stop his wife from collapsing in front of the public. His silence weighed more than any words. As Lydia gasped for breath, still trying to push out one last sentence, I slowly held the phone away. I looked out at the ocean through the glass, the noon sunlight glinting on the water like thousands of bright steel shards. And I turned the phone off. No shaking, no anger, no sadness. Just calm, like a man placing the first brick on the foundation of a new home. This is only the beginning. That afternoon, Bainbridge was covered in a thin silver light of a chilly day. I stood before the glass wall, watching waves crash against the rocks like the steady heartbeat of the sea. Lydia's screams from the morning still echoed in my head, like windows slamming in a storm. Yet strangely, I felt no anger, only a clear emptiness, like someone who has just stepped out of a fire and realizes he is still alive. The library door opened. Nadia walked in, holding an iPad and a stack of new documents. There was no hesitation in her steps, not half a second of doubt. "Everett," Nadia said slowly, "you need to brace yourself." She set the iPad on the table. With one swipe, the screen revealed 2 years' worth of Graham's spending and account statements. The numbers appeared cold, bare, needing no explanation. Total credit card debt, $96,000. I flinched slightly, not at the number, but at the note below it. Consolidation loan, confidential, has $38,000. Secret debt, Nadia explained, hidden from Lydia, hidden from the bank when they applied for the mortgage. And look at this. She slid again. Invoices appeared. Swiss watches, a $3,000 suit, a Palm Springs vacation, a full Italian furniture set, and under each item the familiar line. Paid via transfer, e-matic support. I stared at my own name, not with anger, but like looking at an old shadow I once fed. "You gave them the money," Nadia continued, "and they used it to cover debt. Not for the family, not for the future, just plugging holes." I swallowed, feeling my chest lighten, not because it hurt less, but because the truth was placing every broken piece into its rightful slot. Nadia opened the next document, an email from the Washington Department of Revenue. "Lydia's PR firm is being audited," she said. "Signs of using personal assets as business deductions. Her live stream insulting you this morning? Bad in every way. But worst of all, it drew the audit team's deeper attention." I was silent, not triumphant, just seeing the deck of cards finally showing its true face. After Nadia left the room, August walked in with 2 coffees. He sat down without speaking. Only when I set the stack of papers on the table did he finally say, "Everett, you didn't destroy them." I looked up. He emphasized each word, slow and deep, like heavy wood hitting stone. "They destroyed themselves. Everything you are seeing is simply the truth surfacing." I closed my eyes, letting breath move through my chest gently. It had taken a lifetime in real estate to understand. The homes that look perfect on the outside are often the ones rotten from the foundation, needing only one rainstorm to crack. Graham and Lydia were exactly that kind of house. Just as I was about to stand, my phone buzzed, a notification from the bank's automated email. Notice of default. Whitford residence. I opened it. The letter began with a line every American knows well. "Foreclosure proceedings scheduled." I read every word, clear, sharp, precise. The Tacoma house, the home I once helped Graham put down as a down payment, was about to be seized after 3 months of missed payments. A cold chill ran down my spine, not from satisfaction, but from realizing something far more terrifying. Graham was collapsing before he even understood he was collapsing. I set the phone down, no words, no reaction, just looking at the ocean, where waves kept striking the shore with a rhythm no one could stop. Because I knew the real storm had only begun. Seattle that day was grayer than usual, as if the sky itself felt ashamed for people desperately clinging to the illusion of their own reputation. I was sitting at Baylight Crest, watching seagulls circle over Port Madison when my phone vibrated. Not from Graham, not from the bank, but from an old friend. His voice panicked. "Everett, are you okay? I heard you lost your mind after the fire." I froze. Before I could ask anything, the second call came in, then a third. Then messages flooded in. "Are you all right? Graham said you're no longer lucid? Lydia said you suffered severe psychological trauma. Is it true?" I didn't need to ask where it came from, and when Nadia rushed into the library, breathless from running up the stairs, I knew instantly. Lydia had struck back. "You need to see this," Nadia said, setting the iPad on the table. On the screen were group texts from WhatsApp, family group chats, voice notes forwarded by acquaintances. Everett suffered psychological shock after the fire. He's not mentally stable. He's paranoid about money. Everyone be careful. He needs guardianship. All of it from Lydia. She called Meredith's relatives, my old colleagues at Everett Realty Group, even people who had bought homes through me. She planted each sentence like pouring salt into a wound. Worse, she crafted a narrative that I lost control after the fire, couldn't remember things, couldn't distinguish documents. Every word she spoke was a nail driven into the reputation I built over 40 years in real estate. But Lydia made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought attacking my reputation would make me collapse. Instead, minutes later, that very reputation stood on my side, in a way she never imagined. August walked in holding a silver USB. "It's time." He handed it to Nadia, and within 20 minutes, the media received a file I had kept buried for years. Proof of transfers, Graham's pleading emails, Lydia's thank you message from 2020 when I paid her credit card debt so her studio wouldn't close, along with the property documents I co-signed. Nadia included a 5-page brief, case study, elder financial exploitation, Maddox v. Whitford. No name stated, no relation identified, but the facts matched every number. By evening, the first article appeared. The headline was cold as steel. "Real estate veteran exploited by adult child, a Seattle story." The article spread rapidly. It didn't list my name, but anyone could guess who it was when they read the line. The father provided a total of $573,000 over 10 years, only to be pushed out of his son's home and accused of incompetence. An hour later, Lydia's social media exploded. Her Instagram wall flooded with comments. "You treat your father-in-law like this? Unfollowing you? A PR expert with no shame? You screamed at an elderly man on livestream, now you lie about his health?" Clips from her morning livestream were reshared more than 10,000 times. Every word she screamed became a weapon against her. Her PR studio's rating dropped to its lowest point ever. 2 corporate clients issued statements pausing their contracts, citing brand safety concerns. None of them knew that the person pushing Lydia off the cliff was her own character. I didn't need to speak. I didn't need to retaliate. She destroyed herself. Graham read the article near midnight. Nadia saw the seen notification from his number in the analytics. And 3 minutes later, August stepped onto the balcony, looked at me, and quietly said, "He's looking at his wife with a look he's never used before." The look of a man realizing he gave his life to the wrong person and was dragged down because of it. I watched the Seattle night stretch out in front of me, strangely calm, because I knew what had just happened was only the visible part. The hidden part was waiting to surface. That morning, the gray clouds of Tacoma lay low like a heavy blanket pressing down on the parking lot in front of the Pierce County Courthouse. I stepped out of August Maybach, the cold cutting straight through my coat, yet my mind was strangely clear. A small crowd had gathered outside, neighbors, a few people who had watched Lydia's humiliation live stream, a few curious ones who recognized me from the anonymous article. I didn't care. I only looked at the courthouse glass doors, where the emergency hearing would decide whether my son would let his wife strip his own father of autonomy. When we walked in, Lydia was already there. White blazer, hair in a tight bun, makeup applied one level thicker, trying to project the image of a calm woman concerned for her father-in-law. But her eyes couldn't hide the faint tremor, the worry of someone who knows she has gone too far. Graham stood a step behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. They didn't speak a word to each other. Lydia's attorney, a tall man with a straight nose and a radio ad-smooth voice, stepped forward immediately. "We ask the court to review the mental state of Mr. Everett Maddox," he began as the hearing opened, "as he has suffered psychological trauma after the fire and recently displayed agitated behavior." I stayed calm. No speaking, no reacting, no blinking. He continued, "We have evidence Mr. Maddox is no longer competent to manage his assets." He was about to lift the stack of documents when the back door opened. An older woman carrying a gray leather case entered, the independent psychologist appointed by the court, Dr. Lillian Brooke. She looked straight at the judge, placed her report on the table, and spoke with a voice sharp as a blade cutting through fog. "My evaluation, Your Honor." The judge opened it. Dr. Brooke stood tall, looking at Lydia as if seeing through every layer of makeup. After a 2-hour assessment conducted under RCW 11.130 protocol, I conclude, Mr. Everett Maddox is fully competent, with no signs of cognitive decline, memory impairment, or inability to manage finances. The courtroom erupted. Lydia's face tightened, though she tried to keep smiling. But the next blow came faster than she expected. Attorney Marion Estes rose. She gently placed a USB on the table, like laying the first stone of a bridge she knew would lead Lydia to a cliff. "Your Honor," Marion said, "we submit evidence of attempted conservatorship abuse against Mr. Maddox." On the screen, Lydia's messages appeared one by one. "When he loses the house, it's easier to control. Just say he's unstable." More chat logs followed, detailed, sharp, malicious. Every word is a blade stripping away her facade. Then Marion opened the PDF draft. "Petition for conservatorship, Everett Maddox." The judge turned to Graham. "Mr. Whitford, the initials G. Whitford in the review section, are they yours?" Graham swallowed hard. "Yes, they are." A long wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Marion wasn't done. She played the video from the front door camera of Graham's house the morning Everett was turned away. The scene appeared clear as daylight. Lydia blocking the doorway, opening it exactly 5 centimeters. Graham standing behind, doing nothing. Then Lydia's voice, even through light audio filtering. "Don't let him in. I'm not letting an old man smelling like smoke dirty my house." The courtroom gasped. A few people covered their mouths. A man in the back cursed under his breath. The judge struck the gavel. She looked directly at Lydia, her gaze piercing every illusion Lydia tried to construct. "Pierce County hereby dismisses all petitions and counterpetitions regarding Mr. Maddox's competency." She leaned forward. "And be advised, Mrs. Whitford, any further attempt to interfere with Mr. Maddox's autonomy will result in a criminal investigation." Lydia's face drained of color. Graham bowed his head. Marion closed her file with the calm of someone who knows the battle has only just begun. Tacoma did not have snow that day, but the air was so cold that people on the sidewalk pulled their coats tight around their necks, as if they too could sense a collapse happening somewhere in the city. After the hearing, I returned to Baylight Crest and sat by the glass wall, looking out at the sea. I didn't need to go back to Tacoma to know what was happening. When a person builds an entire life on illusions, when the spotlight finally goes out, the truth appears bare like a room stripped of furniture. And Graham was the one standing in the middle of that room. After Lydia's image crashed to the bottom, literally in just one night, all of Seattle knew. The next morning, without any cancellation emails, without any formal announcement, her PR studio sank like a boat with a hole in the hull. The live stream scandal insulting an elderly man collided perfectly with the tax office's audit letter over shady deductions, causing two major brands to cut ties in a single night, and the rest collapsed like dominoes. The stylists walked out without a word. The content team packed their belongings into cardboard boxes, everyone avoiding Lydia's eyes as if afraid of catching her disgrace. The project manager walked to her desk and set down a stack of papers. Lydia, the studio's image is in free fall. No one wants to be associated. We resign immediately. The accountant appeared, pale, voice shaky but firm. The studio has no funds to make payroll this week. Vendors are demanding payment. I can't handle this anymore. The room, once loud with LED lights and shooting schedules, became a dead studio, each person walking out one by one, leaving Lydia standing alone like a cracked porcelain statue. Not long after, the bank sent an official notice. The Tacoma house, owned by Graham and Lydia, was formally entering foreclosure. The prolonged mortgage delinquency, combined with Lydia's defaulting on credit, sent their credit rating into freefall. Graham tried calling Lydia to discuss how to manage, but she didn't answer, and then she disappeared from the house, taking one suitcase and her laptop, leaving Graham with the debt, the bills, and a life breaking apart like glass shattering on stone. A little later, Auguste sent me a message. "Do you want to see?" I opened the link he sent. The Tacoma home security system was something I had paid for years ago, still tied to the same family account. The camera showed Graham driving to Whidbey Island, my old house, the place where Meredith once laughed in the kitchen, where I hung the drawing of the first home I ever brokered, was now only a patch of gray ash. Graham stepped out, standing in the blackened ground like a lost shadow. The wind from Puget Sound hit his face, blowing his hair to one side. He knelt, touched the ashes, and his hand trembled, not from the cold, but because he was touching the part of life he had burned with his own blindness and silence. My phone vibrated, a single message from Graham. No period, no excuses, no justification, only 6 words. I was wrong, it was me. I stared at the screen for several seconds, not because I was moved, but because I knew. Those words were not for me. They were for the child inside him, the child Lydia had suffocated with control and the need to maintain a perfect image for years. He had just realized he had stood on the wrong side of history, wrong in morality, wrong in humanity, wrong in what it means to be a son. I set the phone on the table, stood up, and looked out at the sea. The waves were getting stronger, as if nature understood that all old structures were preparing to collapse so something else could be built. And then I replied to Graham, slow, clear, without emotion, without kindness, without judgment. Only the truth that needed to be spoken. Tomorrow afternoon, the old place. Say everything. I turned off the screen and returned to the sound of the waves. The northern wind slipped through the edge of the glass, cold but clarifying, because I knew the final confrontation was closer than ever. Seattle afternoons have a strange kind of light, like a silver mirror covered in mist, cold yet warm enough to remind you that the day is ending. But not everything is over. I chose Alki Beach as the place to meet Graham, not because it was close, but because here, the wind from Elliott Bay blows straight into your face, not letting anyone hide from their true feelings. Graham arrived a few minutes early. He stood near the water's edge, hands stuffed into the pockets of an old coat, shoulders slightly hunched like a man who had lost his entire life in 1 week. When he heard my footsteps, He turned. His eyes were red, not angry, not defensive, only the collapse of someone who finally sees every mistake he had tried to hide. "Dad," he said, his voice tightening as if he swallowed sand. We stood facing each other while waves crashed against the shore. I didn't speak first. The person who needed to open up today was him. Finally, Graham took a deep breath and said, "I'm scared, Dad." I frowned. "Scared of what?" He bit his lip, struggling with himself before forcing out each word. "Scared of failing. Scared of embarrassment. Scared Lydia would think I'm useless. Scared everyone would know I'm not as good as you." He paused, voice cracking. "My whole life I felt your real estate shadow was too big. I thought I had to succeed fast, make more money than you, prove something, and I chose the worst way to do that. I looked at my son, the child who once ran after me on this same beach, laughing as I taught him how to skip stones across the water. And now, in this same place, he stood before me as a man who had lost himself because he feared being judged. "Graham," I said slowly, each word placed like a stone in the right spot, "you can start your life over any time, but not by stepping on your own father to do it." A cold gust swept across the sand. Graham lowered his head, shoulders shaking, and I knew, for the first time in years, he truly heard me. I laid out the conditions, not to punish him, but to save him from the same road that dragged him to the edge. "First," I said, "you have to relearn personal finance from scratch. No more credit cards, no secret loans, no spending beyond your income." He nodded. "Second, you must work a low-wage job for 1 year. Anything as long as it's real labor, disciplined, and no one calls you the man behind Lydia anymore." He swallowed. "I understand." "Third," I continued, "the $573,000. You will repay it gradually, under a structured plan Marion and Nadia create. No running, no excuses. You pay it back with your own real effort." This time Graham lifted his head, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I can do it. I will. I promise." I let him finish. Then I placed my hand on his shoulder for the first time in years. "You are still my son, but the last chance, you must protect it yourself." The wind grew stronger, waves slapping against rocks like the drums of the sea. I looked straight into Graham's eyes and said the sentence I had prepared for this moment. "You have 1 year to prove it." Graham nodded, not the nod of someone making an empty promise, but the nod of a man who knew that if he lost this chance, he would have nothing left to rise from. 1 year passed so quickly that sometimes I had to look at the calendar to believe how far I had come. Bainbridge Island in early autumn had a soft golden light, like an old layer of oil paint, brushing over every Douglas fir, every slope, every house along the bay. And in that setting, my new home stood quietly as an answer to fate. Not flashy, but solid, spacious, full of light, and full of the breath of a different beginning. August was the developer of the Baylight Crest expansion, but in my case, he didn't just build a house. He invited me to be a partner. "Everett," he once said, "life only took one old house from you, but it gave you a new place. Stand with me. Don't stand behind anyone." And I accepted. The new job didn't make me rich, but it gave me something far more important: dignity and purpose. Twice a week, I opened the Home and Dignity Workshop in the Bainbridge Community Room. A small class, but full of silver-haired people, those running from family scams, those whose children or relatives had taken their money and didn't know how to get it back. I taught them how to read contracts, how to manage assets, and how to protect themselves from the legal traps that sometimes even family members built. No smoke, no tears, only knowledge and the respect they deserved. A 68-year-old woman once said to me, "You're not just teaching us to keep our homes, you're teaching us to keep our dignity." Perhaps that is the compliment I cherish most in my life. Some doors close to remind us to rebuild the foundation of our entire lives. And there was one more person in this story, Someone I once thought would be family, but turned out to be nothing more than a cold wind passing through my life. Lydia Whitford. 1 year after her collapse, Seattle barely mentioned her name anymore, not because she was forgiven, but because no one wanted to remember a dirty PR story that once made the whole city uncomfortable. The old studio was handed over to a young startup group. The Whitford PR studio sign was taken down so quickly it looked like a liquidation. People said that when the last letter was removed from the glass wall, Lydia watched from inside her car. No makeup, hair tied in a rush, eyes sunken, as if for the first time in her life she understood what it meant to lose everything. No clients hired. Her again. No agency accepted her resume. Those who once praised her now avoided her name like a media curse. Rumor said Lydia moved to a cheap apartment near Renton, working part-time at a small company that fixed advertising banners. No live stream, no talk of class, no more calling herself an image queen. Only a woman trying to learn the lesson she had mocked her whole life: humility. I don't hate Lydia, but sometimes when I stand on the porch of my new Bainbridge home, looking over the bay in the golden afternoon, I realize some people appear in our lives only to show us who truly stands beside us and who is just a toxic shadow. Graham also had his own year, the hardest year of his life. He worked again from scratch in a small brokerage in Kent. No more glass-walled offices or Lydia's glossy PR meetings. There he was just Graham, junior broker, carrying coffee, cleaning desks, unlocking the office while it was still dark. His coworkers didn't know he had collapsed before all of Seattle. Or maybe they knew, but no one mentioned it. All they saw was a young man working hard, punctual, not complaining, not showing off, not boasting. And every month I received the bank notification. The structured plan payment transferred on time, with the exact amount, not a dollar missing. Not because it was required, but because he chose to stand up most decently. We met again on a calm morning at Seward Park. The Seattle sky that day was so high it felt like you could touch it with your fingertips. Graham stood under a maple tree, hands in his jacket pockets, hair longer, face tanned, looking like a man who had walked through a storm, no longer careless, no longer chaotic. He looked at me, smiling a little. "Dad, you're here." I nodded, not hugging him, not holding his hand. We just walked along Lake Washington talking about work, about the small houses in Kent, about my workshops, about what he was trying to fix. No embellishment, no need to act emotionally, just two men rebuilding a broken bridge. At the end of the trail, Graham stopped, took a breath, voice low and sincere. "Dad, I still owe you a lot, but I'm trying. I really am." I touched his shoulder lightly. "I know. Forgiveness isn't a one-day thing, but we're already on the road." Some stories end with the sound of a door closing. Some end with a sigh. But my story ends with the light shining on the floor of a new house, where I stand upright after a year of walking out from the cold ashes of my own life. If you have stayed with me to these final lines, thank you, truly. Not many people have the patience to walk through a journey full of fracture, collapse, and then a quiet rise like this. Your presence until the last moment is a rare kindness to me. I don't tell this story to be pitied. I tell it to remind someone out there, truth can be hidden, but it never disappears. And sometimes what saves us is not shouting, but the right silence and a door closing on the right person. If this story touched you in any moment, even just a sentence, an image, or a thought about family and dignity, leave a single. Just one dot, and I'll know that out there are people who still believe in light, in truth, and in the kind of justice that doesn't need noise, only timing. And if you want to walk with me in the next stories, other journeys of kinship, betrayal, and rebirth, follow. Leave a comment about where you're listening from, or simply stay with me in the next chapters. Thank you. truly. See you in the next story.